Welcome to the fascinating world of the Hohenzollern dynasty, a family whose secrets and legacy have shaped European history for centuries. From their humble beginnings in 11th century Swabia, Germany, the Hohenzollerns ascended to power, ruling Brandenburg, Prussia, and ultimately the German Empire. Their empire was built on immense wealth, generated through vast estates, industrial investments, and colonial trade. Figures like Frederick the Great and Wilhelm II played key roles in transforming Prussia into a military and industrial powerhouse, yet behind their rise lay a dark history. The Hohenzollerns were no strangers to scandal, with hidden alliances, ruthless assassinations, and family betrayals that echo the intrigue of dynasties like the Borgias and the Romanovs. Though their reign ended with World War I, their influence endures through cultural landmarks and ongoing restitution claims. Join us as we uncover the untold secrets of this powerful dynasty that continues to captivate the world. The Hohenzollern dynasty, a name that echoes through the corridors of European history, is synonymous with ambition, power, and cultural sophistication. Their journey from obscure feudal lords to one of the most influential royal houses in Europe is a captivating narrative of strategic brilliance, military triumphs, and cultural patronage. Emerging from humble beginnings, the Hohenzollerns crafted an empire that rivaled the grandeur of the Habsburgs and Bourbons, leaving an indelible mark on the political, economic, and cultural landscapes of their time. Their story is not merely one of wealth accumulation, but a complex tapestry woven with conquests, alliances, and a relentless pursuit of prestige that transformed them from new money upstarts into old money titans. The origins of the Hohenzollern dynasty can be traced to the 11th century in the rugged landscapes of Swabia, a region in what is now southern Germany. In these early days, the Hohenzollerns were modest feudal lords, their wealth tied to the agrarian yields of their Swabian estates and the fortifications of their modest castles. Unlike the ancient houses of Europe, whose pedigrees stretch back to the Carolingian era, the Hohenzollerns were relative newcomers, their status more akin to ambitious entrepreneurs than entrenched aristocrats. Their early fortunes were built on astute land management, local alliances, and a keen eye for opportunity. This new money foundation set the stage for their remarkable ascent as they leveraged their resources to climb the hierarchical ladder of medieval Europe. The Hohenzollerns' initial rise was marked by their ability to navigate the complex feudal system of the Holy Roman Empire. Through calculated marriages and political alliances, they expanded their influence beyond Swabia, laying the groundwork for their eventual dominance. Their story during this period mirrors that of modern-day pioneers, who, starting with limited means, build empires through vision and tenacity. The Hohenzollerns' early success was not the product of inherited privilege, but of relentless ambition and strategic foresight. The Hohenzollerns' fortunes took a decisive turn in the early 15th century when they acquired the Duchy of Brandenburg, a pivotal moment that catapulted them from regional obscurity to the forefront of European politics. This acquisition was not merely a territorial gain, but a strategic coup that provided the family with a power base in the heart of the Holy Roman Empire. Brandenburg, with its fertile lands and strategic location, became the cornerstone of their burgeoning empire, offering both economic resources and political leverage. The true architect of the Hohenzollern ascendancy, however, was Frederick the Great, who reigned in the 18th century. A military genius and a visionary leader, Frederick transformed Prussia, a state rooted in Brandenburg, into a formidable European power. His military campaigns, including the Silesian Wars expanded Prussia's borders and established it as a rival to Austria and France. Frederick's leadership was characterized by discipline, innovation, and an unrelenting drive to elevate his family's status. Under his rule, the Hohenzollerns transcended their origins as regional rulers, emerging as key players on the European stage. Frederick's military successes were complemented by his domestic reforms, which modernized Prussia's bureaucracy and economy. His policies fostered agricultural productivity, strengthened the military, and promoted education, laying the foundation for Prussia's long-term stability. His reign marked the Hohenzollerns' transformation from feudal lords to enlightened monarchs, capable of competing with the most powerful dynasties of the era. Beyond his military and political achievements, Frederick the Great was a passionate patron of the arts and culture, a facet of his reign that distinguished the Hohenzollerns from their contemporaries. His most enduring cultural contribution was the construction of Sanssouci Palace in Potsdam, a Rococo masterpiece that rivaled the opulence of Versailles. Sanssouci was more than a royal residence. It was a bold statement of the Hohenzollerns' ambition to be recognized as arbiters of taste and refinement. The palace's elegant architecture, lush gardens, and intricate interiors reflected Frederick's vision of a Prussia that was not only militarily formidable, but also culturally sophisticated. Frederick's commitment to culture extended beyond Sanssouci. He invested heavily in Berlin's art collections, amassing a treasury of paintings, sculptures, and antiquities that elevated the city's status as a cultural hub. He was also a patron of the sciences and philosophy, fostering an intellectual environment that attracted luminaries such as Voltaire. Under Frederick's stewardship, Prussia became a beacon of enlightenment, drawing artists, writers, and thinkers from across Europe. This cultural renaissance was a deliberate strategy to enhance the Hohenzollerns' prestige, ensuring their legacy would endure beyond the battlefield. The Hohenzollerns' ascent to prominence was significantly bolstered by a series of meticulously planned marriages that intertwined their lineage with Europe's most powerful royal houses. These unions were far from mere romantic endeavors. They were deliberate political strategies aimed at amplifying the family's influence across the continent. By forging marital alliances with the Russian, British, and other illustrious royal families, the Hohenzollerns secured diplomatic and military partnerships that strengthened their position in European affairs. These connections function much like modern corporate mergers, granting access to elite circles and reinforcing their status as a formidable dynasty. The marriages not only enhanced their prestige, but also created a web of mutual obligations, ensuring support in times of political or military strife. This strategic diplomacy allowed the Hohenzollerns to extend their influence well beyond Prussia, embedding their legacy in the intricate tapestry of European royalty. The impact of these alliances was far-reaching, providing the Hohenzollerns with critical political leverage and economic opportunities. During conflicts, such as the wars of the 18th and 19th centuries, these royal connections offered diplomatic backing and resources, fortifying Prussia's resilience. The family's adeptness at navigating the complex landscape of European diplomacy through these marriages highlighted their strategic brilliance. Their ability to maintain and leverage these relationships ensured that their influence permeated far beyond their territorial borders, positioning them as central figures in the continent's power dynamics. This network of alliances was a cornerstone of their dominance, underscoring their foresight in building a dynasty that thrived on interconnectedness and mutual benefit. Building on the political and cultural foundations laid by Frederick the Great, the Hohenzollerns successors, embraced the Industrial Revolution, propelling Prussia into an era of unprecedented economic growth. In the 19th century, the family made substantial investments in burgeoning industries, including coal mining, steel production, and railway infrastructure. These ventures transformed Prussia into a leading economic force, with the Hohenzollerns at the helm of this industrial metamorphosis. Their forward-thinking approach to modernization allowed them to diversify their wealth, moving beyond traditional land-based revenue to embrace the opportunities of an industrialized world. This shift marked a pivotal evolution in their economic strategy, aligning them with the era's most dynamic economic trends. The Hohenzollerns' industrial empire was vast, encompassing major enterprises such as the Krupp Company, a global leader in steel and armaments production. Their investments in railways revolutionized trade and communication, knitting Prussia's economy into a cohesive and efficient system. These infrastructure projects not only boosted commerce, but also strengthened national unity, facilitating the movement of goods and people. Combined with their extensive land holdings, this industrial wealth elevated the Hohenzollerns to one of Europe's richest families, rivaling American industrial giants like John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie. Their economic strategy was a masterful blend of aristocratic tradition and modern enterprise, ensuring their financial dominance in a rapidly changing world. By adapting to the industrial age, the Hohenzollerns secured their place among the era's economic elite. Their wealth, a testament to their ability to innovate and evolve. Despite their extraordinary achievements, the Hohenzollerns could not withstand the seismic shifts of the early 20th century. The First World War, a devastating global conflict, precipitated the dynasty's decline, unraveling centuries of carefully built power. Kaiser Wilhelm II, the last Hohenzollern monarch, faced insurmountable challenges as Germany's defeat became inevitable. The war's toll, compounded by domestic unrest and controversies surrounding Wilhelm's erratic leadership, led to his abdication in 1918, marking the collapse of the Hohenzollern monarchy. This moment was a profound turning point, signaling the end of their political reign and the dissolution of their empire in the face of a transformed global order. The war's aftermath was catastrophic for the dynasty, the newly established Weimar Republic seeking to dismantle the old imperial structures, confiscated the Hohenzollerns' vast castles, estates, and industrial holdings. This systematic seizure stripped the family of their wealth and influence, relegating them to the margins of history. Once a dominant force in European politics, the Hohenzollerns were reduced to a historical relic, their political power extinguished in the wake of Germany's defeat. The loss of their assets was not merely financial but symbolic, marking the end of an era in which monarchies held sway over the continent. Yet even in defeat, the Hohenzollern story remained one of resilience, as their legacy found new expressions in the cultural and intellectual spheres. While the Hohenzollerns' political and economic power faded, their cultural and intellectual contributions continued to resonate, ensuring their legacy endured beyond their fall. Sanssouci Palace, Frederick the Great's Rococo masterpiece in Potsdam, remains a timeless symbol of their artistic vision, attracting global visitors with its elegant architecture and lush gardens. The palace stands as a testament to the dynasty's ambition to be remembered not only as conquerors, but as patrons of beauty and refinement. Similarly, the art collections amassed by the Hohenzollerns, now preserved in Berlin's world-class museums, continue to inspire and educate, offering a window into their cultural aspirations. Their investments in education and the sciences also left a lasting impact, laying the groundwork for Germany's emergence as an intellectual powerhouse. By fostering institutions and supporting thinkers, the Hohenzollerns helped shape a legacy that transcended their political demise. These contributions, from the treasures of Sanssouci to the intellectual vibrancy of Berlin, ensured that the Hohenzollern name remained synonymous with cultural and intellectual achievement. Though their empire crumbled, their influence persisted, woven into the fabric of Germany's cultural heritage, and serving as a reminder of a dynasty that for centuries shaped the course of European history. Frederick the Great's secret homosexual affairs. Frederick the Great, revered as one of history's most astute military strategists, transformed Prussia into a formidable European power through his brilliant battlefield tactics and sweeping military reforms. His leadership during conflicts like the Silesian Wars cemented his reputation as a ruler of unparalleled vision, earning him admiration across the continent. Yet beneath the veneer of his public triumphs lay a private life shrouded in secrecy, marked by personal relationships that were carefully concealed to safeguard the Hohenzollern dynasty's prestige. The most poignant of these was his bond with Hans Hermann von Katte, a young officer whose tragic fate reveals the profound personal costs borne by a king navigating the rigid expectations of 18th century royalty. This hidden chapter of Frederick's life, fraught with emotional depth and political peril, offers a nuanced perspective on the man behind the crown, whose private struggles contrasted sharply with his public triumphs. At the heart of Frederick's personal narrative lies his relationship with Hans Hermann von Katte, a charismatic young officer whose presence in the Prussian court sparked one of the most enigmatic and tragic episodes of Frederick's life. Their connection, which blossomed in the early 1720s, transcended the boundaries of typical camaraderie, hinting at a profound emotional intimacy. Historians analyzing Frederick's surviving letters to Katte have noted their tender and affectionate tone, suggesting a bond that was deeply personal, if not romantic. While definitive proof of a romantic relationship remains elusive, the intensity of their correspondence and the secrecy surrounding their interactions point to a connection that was both cherished and perilous. This relationship, veiled from public scrutiny, underscores the challenges faced by royal figures whose personal desires clashed with the demands of their station, forcing them to navigate their emotions in the shadows. The need to conceal Frederick's relationship with Katte stemmed from the Hohenzollerns' acute awareness of the political risks posed by any scandal. Frederick's father, Frederick William I, was a stern patriarch, obsessed with upholding the dynasty's reputation and ensuring its unbroken lineage. Any suggestion of unconventional personal conduct, particularly regarding Frederick's sexuality, threatened to undermine the family's standing among Europe's monarchies. Much like Queen Elizabeth III, who meticulously curated her public image to maintain her authority, Frederick William I imposed strict control over his son's private life. The Hohenzollerns' power depended on projecting an image of moral and political stability, and any deviation from societal norms risked destabilizing their influence. This fear of scandal drove the royal family to extreme measures, ensuring that Frederick's personal affairs remained hidden, even at great personal cost to the young prince. As Frederick and Katte's bond deepened, it became a source of both solace and danger. Katte, a loyal and charming officer, likely provided Frederick with a rare sense of companionship in the rigid, hierarchical world of the Prussian court. Their relationship, though discreet, grew increasingly significant, with Frederick's letters revealing a vulnerability rarely seen in his public persona. However, this closeness drew the attention of Frederick William I, who viewed Katte's influence over his son with suspicion. The potential for their bond to be perceived as scandalous posed a direct threat to the Hohenzollern legacy, as any public exposure could have weakened Prussia's alliances and emboldened rival powers. The relationship, once a private refuge for Frederick, became a political liability, setting the stage for a tragic confrontation that would alter the course of both men's lives. In 1730, the fragile secrecy surrounding Frederick and Kata's relationship unraveled with devastating consequences. Kata was arrested on charges of desertion during a military campaign, a seemingly straightforward offense that masked deeper motivations. Many historians argue that the true reason for Kata's arrest and subsequent execution was his intimate connection to Frederick, which threatened to ignite a scandal capable of tarnishing the Hohenzollern name. Frederick William I, determined to quash any hint of impropriety, ordered Kata's trial and execution, a decision that served as both a punishment and a warning. Kata's death was a profound loss for Frederick, who was forced to witness the execution, an event that left an enduring emotional scar. This tragedy highlighted the brutal reality of royal life, where personal affections were sacrificed to preserve political power and dynastic honor. Kata's execution was a stark demonstration of the Hohenzollerns' willingness to prioritize their public image over individual lives. The royal family's commitment to maintaining control over their reputation led to the sacrifice of a young officer who had been a trusted confidant of the future king. This act of ruthless pragmatism reflects the broader dynamics of 18th century royal courts, where personal relationships were often subordinated to the imperatives of political survival. Kata's fate, likely a casualty of both his loyalty to Frederick and the monarchy's fear of scandal, underscores the darker side of Frederick's reign. It reveals a world where love and loyalty were overshadowed by the relentless demands of dynastic duty, leaving Frederick to bear the weight of his grief in silence. Frederick's concealed relationship with Kata finds echoes in the lives of other historical figures, who navigated similar tensions between personal desires and public roles. King James I of England, for instance, maintained close relationships with male courtiers like Robert Carr and George Villiers, which were discreetly managed to avoid jeopardizing his authority. Similarly, the rumored connections of socialite Juliana Force to influential figures like the Whitneys highlight the recurring theme of elite figures concealing their private lives to preserve their social standing. These parallels illuminate the universal challenges faced by those in power, where personal authenticity was often sacrificed to meet societal expectations. Frederick's story, like those of his counterparts, reveals the human cost of maintaining a public facade in the face of rigid cultural norms. The execution of Hans Hermann von Katte remains one of the most poignant and tragic episodes in Frederick's life, symbolizing the profound sacrifices required of those who wielded power. The emotional toll of losing Katte, coupled with the public humiliation of his execution, likely shaped Frederick's later years, influencing his guarded approach to personal relationships. The story of their bond, though never fully acknowledged during Frederick's lifetime, has since become a lens through which historians explore the interplay of love, duty, and power in royal life. Katte's death serves as a haunting reminder of the human cost of dynastic ambition, challenging the glorified narratives of Frederick's reign, and inviting a deeper reflection on the personal struggles of a king who reshaped Europe. Wilhelm II's secret naval arms deal. In the turbulent years preceding World War I, Europe was a cauldron of rivalries, alliances, and unspoken fears, teetering on the brink of catastrophe. Amid this precarious landscape, a clandestine operation orchestrated by Kaiser Wilhelm II, the last German emperor, added a dangerous undercurrent to the escalating tensions. Wilhelm's secret naval arms deals, funded through covert loans from Deutsche Bank, were a pivotal yet hidden force in intensifying the naval arms race with Britain, setting the stage for one of the most devastating conflicts in history. These secretive maneuvers, driven by Wilhelm's ambition to elevate Germany to global dominance, reveal a leader whose thirst for power and penchant for secrecy played a critical role in igniting the flames of war. The story of these covert financial arrangements not only underscores the fragility of pre-war Europe, but also highlights the profound consequences of unchecked imperial ambition. Wilhelm II was no mere ceremonial monarch. He was a dynamic and ambitious ruler determined to reshape Germany's place on the world stage. At the dawn of the 20th century, Britain's Royal Navy reigned supreme, its dominance over the seas a cornerstone of its global empire. Wilhelm, envious of Britain's naval prowess and eager to assert Germany's military might, embarked on a bold and secretive campaign to challenge this supremacy. Between 1898 and 1912, he spearheaded a clandestine effort to fund Germany's naval expansion through covert loans from Deutsche Bank, bypassing the scrutiny of the Reichstag, Germany's parliamentary body. These loans enabled the rapid construction of a formidable fleet, including dreadnoughts and cruisers, designed to rival Britain's naval strength. Wilhelm's vision was clear. A powerful German navy would not only elevate Germany's status, but also force Britain to recognize it as an equal, reshaping the global balance of power. The covert nature of Wilhelm's naval arms deals was a deliberate strategy to avoid both domestic and international repercussions. Public disclosure of such aggressive military spending could have provoked outrage within Germany, where political factions might have opposed the costly endeavor and alarmed Britain, potentially escalating diplomatic tensions prematurely. By securing secret loans from Deutsche Bank, Wilhelm ensured that the financial underpinnings of his naval buildup remained hidden from the Reichstag and the broader public. This secrecy was critical, as it allowed Germany to amass a significant fleet without triggering immediate diplomatic crises or economic debates. The involvement of Deutsche Bank, one of Germany's most powerful financial institutions, provided the necessary capital while maintaining a facade of normalcy, shielding Wilhelm's ambitions from the prying eyes of both allies and adversaries. The implications of Wilhelm's secret naval arms deals extended far beyond the shipyards of Kiel and Wilhelmshaven. These covert loans were a linchpin in the intensifying naval arms race between Germany and Britain, a competition that fueled mistrust and fear across Europe. Each new German battleship launched under the cloak of secrecy was a direct challenge to Britain's maritime dominance, prompting the British to respond with their own naval expansions, including the revolutionary HMS Dreadnought in 1906. This tit-for-tat escalation created a vicious cycle of rivalry, where each nation's efforts to outbuild the other deepened mutual suspicion. The arms race, stoked by Wilhelm's covert financing, transformed a potential diplomatic rivalry into a geopolitical powder keg, contributing significantly to the tensions that erupted into World War I in 1914. The secret deals, initially intended to give Germany a strategic edge, instead sowed the seeds of a broader conflict. To fully grasp the scope of Wilhelm's covert naval arms deals, one must turn to historical records, though the specifics remain partially obscured by the passage of time. Reports from British intelligence and fragmented records from Deutsche Bank provide glimpses into the financial machinations that fueled Germany's naval ambitions. These sources suggest that the loans were structured to bypass Reichstag oversight, allowing Wilhelm to allocate funds directly to shipbuilding and armaments without parliamentary approval. Deutsche Bank's role as a financier was pivotal, leveraging its vast resources to support the Kaiser's vision while maintaining discretion. The bank's involvement highlights the intricate interplay between finance and politics in Wilhelmina Germany, where economic powerhouses quietly underpin military expansion. While some historians debate the exact scale of these loans, their impact on Germany's naval buildup and the subsequent arms race is undeniable, marking a critical juncture in the path to war. Wilhelm II's secret naval arms deals find echoes in other historical instances of clandestine financing, where secrecy served to advance political or military agendas. The Spanish Inquisition, partially funded through covert financial channels by the Bourbon monarchy, relied on hidden transactions to bolster royal authority while evading public scrutiny. Similarly, the Teapot Dome scandal in the 1920s, United States-involved secret loans and leases that enriched private interests at the expense of government transparency. In each case, the use of covert financing allowed powerful actors to pursue their goals without immediate accountability, often with far-reaching consequences. Wilhelm's deals, like these historical parallels, underscore the dangers of secretive financial maneuvers, which can destabilize political systems and precipitate crises that ripple across nations and eras. The Kaiser's actions, cloaked in secrecy, mirror these patterns, revealing a recurring theme of ambition overriding caution. Framing Wilhelm II's naval arms deals as the Kaiser's secret fleet that sparked war, captures the profound significance of his covert actions. This was not merely a national project to enhance military capabilities. It was a calculated gamble that altered the global balance of power. Each ship constructed with Deutsche Bank's secret loans was a provocative signal to Britain and other European powers, asserting Germany's intent to challenge the established order. The naval arms race, fueled by these clandestine funds, heightened tensions and eroded diplomatic trust, transforming Europe into a battleground of competing ambitions. Wilhelm's secret fleet became a symbol of Germany's rising power, but also a catalyst for the mistrust and fear that propelled the continent toward war. The consequences of these deals were not just military, but geopolitical, reshaping alliances and rivalries in the lead-up to 1914. The naval arms race between Germany and Britain was more than a contest of industrial might. It was a struggle for supremacy that reverberated across the globe. Wilhelm's covert naval buildup, enabled by Deutsche Bank's loans, was a bold assertion of Germany's imperial aspirations, but it came at a steep cost. The secrecy of the deals allowed Germany to amass a fleet that challenged Britain's dominance, but it also inflamed rivalries and undermined diplomatic efforts to maintain peace. Wilhelm's ambition, cloaked in secrecy, turned a manageable rivalry into a crisis that engulfed Europe. The Kaiser's actions, driven by a desire to rival Britain's naval power, illustrate the perils of unchecked ambition, where the pursuit of dominance can lead to catastrophic consequences. The secret fleet, once a symbol of German pride, became a harbinger of the war that would redefine the 20th century. While the broader contours of the Anglo-German naval arms race are well documented, the specifics of Wilhelm II's covert loans from Deutsche Bank remain a subject of historical debate. Some scholars argue that the loans were a critical enabler of Germany's naval expansion, providing the financial flexibility to pursue Wilhelm's aggressive policies without public or parliamentary interference. Others contend that the scale and secrecy of these deals may have been exaggerated, with Germany's naval buildup relying on a combination of public and private funding. Despite these debates, the impact of Wilhelm's actions is indisputable. The rapid expansion of the German Navy, facilitated by covert financing, heightened tensions with Britain and contributed to the complex web of rivalries that precipitated World War I. The controversy surrounding the loans underscores the challenges of uncovering hidden financial dealings in historical analysis, yet their role in escalating pre-war tensions remains a focal point of study. Deutsche Bank's role in Wilhelm's secret naval arms deals highlights the profound influence of financial institutions in shaping political and military outcomes. As a leading player in Germany's economic landscape, the bank wielded significant power, capable of funding ambitious projects that aligned with the Kaiser's vision. By facilitating covert loans, Deutsche Bank enabled Wilhelm to bypass democratic oversight, raising questions about the accountability of both the monarchy and the financial sector. The bank's willingness to engage in secretive transactions reflects the complex interplay between finance and state power in Wilhelmina Germany, where economic interests often aligned with the imperial ambitions. This dynamic, while critical to Germany's naval buildup, also underscores the risks of financial institutions operating without transparency, as their actions can have far-reaching consequences for global stability. Augusta's hidden reformist influence. In the intricate tapestry of German history, Augusta of Saxe-Weimar, the wife of Emperor Wilhelm I, emerges as a figure of understated yet profound influence. Often relegated to the margins as a supportive consort, Augusta wielded a clandestine power that shaped the trajectory of the German Empire during the transformative 1860s. Her subtle advocacy for liberal reforms, particularly her influence over the formidable Otto von Bismarck, reveals a woman whose vision and strategic acumen were pivotal in steering Germany toward modernization. This role, however, was deliberately obscured to preserve the monarchy's male-dominated image, as acknowledging her influence risked undermining Wilhelm I's authority. Augusta's story, veiled in secrecy, underscores the critical yet often overlooked contributions of women in shaping political landscapes, offering a compelling glimpse into the dynamics of power behind the Prussian throne. Augusta's influence was not marked by public proclamations or overt power grabs, but by a masterful use of her position to guide the political currents of her time. Through private correspondence and discreet conversations, as evidenced in her letters and Bismarck's memoirs, she quietly championed liberal reforms that aligned with the growing calls for modernization in Europe. Her advocacy was particularly significant in persuading Bismarck, a staunch conservative, to consider parliamentary concessions that would ease tensions with liberal factions. These concessions were crucial steps toward the political reforms that facilitated the unification of Germany in 1871. Augusta's approach was one of finesse. She offered suggestions, planted ideas, and leveraged her proximity to power to influence decisions without ever stepping into the spotlight, a testament to her understanding of the delicate balance required within the royal court. The secrecy surrounding Augusta's role was a strategic necessity, rooted in the monarchy's need to project an image of unassailable male authority. In an era when monarchs were expected to embody absolute control, any hint that Augusta wielded significant influence could have been perceived as a challenge to Wilhelm I's sovereignty. To maintain this facade, her contributions were downplayed, her actions confined to the shadows of the court. This deliberate concealment ensured that Wilhelm I remained the central figure in the public narrative, while Augusta operated as a silent partner, guiding policy through subtle interventions. Her ability to navigate the complex interplay of court politics and public perception highlights her as a figure of remarkable intelligence and restraint, whose influence was felt but rarely acknowledged. Augusta's behind-the-scenes role draws striking parallels with other powerful women in history who shaped events from the sidelines, like Catherine de' Medici, who maneuvered through the treacherous French court to influence her son's reigns. Augusta used her position to steer Germany's political course without claiming formal power. Similarly, the enigmatic influence of Rasputin over the Romanov family in Russia mirrors Augusta's ability to sway key figures while maintaining an outward appearance of detachment. These women, though operating in different contexts, shared a common trait: the ability to wield influence indirectly, shaping decisions through persuasion and strategic alliances. Augusta's quiet pressure on Wilhelm I and Bismarck places her in this lineage of influential women, whose contributions were often obscured to uphold patriarchal norms. The Hohenzollern court, like many royal institutions of the 19th century, was a bastion of male dominance, where women were expected to embody traditional roles as supportive spouses. Augusta's ability to transcend these constraints while adhering to the expected decorum was a remarkable feat. She understood that overt displays of influence would provoke backlash, potentially weakening the monarchy's public image. Instead, she operated within the confines of her role, using her access to Wilhelm I and Bismarck to advocate for progressive policies. Her reformist vision, favoring liberalization and parliamentary engagement, was forward-thinking, aligning with the broader European trend toward constitutional governance. Augusta's nuanced approach ensured that her influence remained effective yet invisible, preserving the monarchy's authority while advancing her goals. The political reforms of the 1860s, though often attributed to Bismarck's pragmatic leadership, bore the imprint of Augusta's quiet advocacy. Her influence was instrumental in softening Bismarck's resistance to liberal ideas, particularly the need for parliamentary concessions that would placate reformist factions. These concessions were not mere political compromises. They were foundational to the establishment of the German Empire, enabling a unified state with a more inclusive political framework. Augusta's role in this process, though rarely highlighted, was critical in bridging the gap between conservative traditions and the demands of a modernizing society. Her vision for a progressive Germany, realized through these reforms, laid the groundwork for a nation that could compete on the European stage, even as her contributions remained overshadowed by the men who claimed credit. The deliberate minimization of Augusta's role reflects a broader historical tendency to marginalize women's contributions, particularly in male-dominated spheres like politics. The secrecy surrounding her influence was not merely a personal choice, but a strategic decision to protect the monarchy's image. Acknowledging Augusta's role would have challenged the narrative of Wilhelm I as the sole architect of Germany's rise, potentially exposing vulnerabilities in the Hohenzollern power structure. This calculated obscurity ensured that Augusta's legacy was relegated to the footnotes of history, her impact diluted in favor of a male-centric narrative. Yet the evidence of her influence, scattered in letters, memoirs, and the outcomes of the reforms themselves, paints a picture of a woman whose quiet determination shaped a critical juncture in German history. Augusta's reformist vision and strategic acumen. Augusta's advocacy for liberal reforms was driven by a deep understanding of the political and social currents sweeping through 19th century Europe. She recognized that Germany's future depended on adapting to the demands of modernization, including greater political participation and institutional flexibility. Her ability to convey these ideas to Bismarck, a man known for his conservative rigidity, was a testament to her diplomatic skill and intellectual foresight. Augusta's reformist vision was not about personal aggrandizement, but about securing a stable and progressive future for Germany. Her strategic interventions, though subtle, were pivotal in aligning Prussian policy with the broader trends of liberalization, ensuring that the German Empire emerged as a modern state capable of navigating the complexities of the industrial age. Augusta's legacy is one of hidden strength and visionary leadership, obscured by the conventions of her time. Her role in shaping the reforms of the 1860s was a masterclass in indirect influence, demonstrating how power could be wielded without formal authority. While her name may not resonate as loudly as those of Wilhelm I or Bismarck, her impact on Germany's political evolution is undeniable. The parliamentary concessions she helped foster were stepping stones to the German Empire's formation, a legacy that endures in the nation's historical trajectory. Augusta's story challenges the traditional narratives of power, revealing the critical contributions of women who, despite being sidelined, played decisive roles in shaping history. Her quiet resolve and strategic vision mark her as a pivotal figure in the Hohenzollern saga. Augusta's story resonates with other historical figures whose influence was similarly understated yet transformative. Women like Madame de Pompadour, who shaped French policy under Louis XV, or Eleanor of Aquitaine, who influenced European politics through her marriages and council, share Augusta's knack for wielding power behind the scenes. These women navigated patriarchal systems with ingenuity, using their proximity to power to effect change while maintaining the appearance of deference. Augusta's ability to influence Bismarck and Wilhelm I places her in this lineage, highlighting the universal challenges faced by women in power-adjacent roles. Her story underscores the importance of looking beyond official records to uncover the hidden hands that shaped historical events, particularly those of women whose contributions were systematically downplayed. Wilhelm I's secret assassination attempt cover-up. In 1878, the German Empire, newly unified under the Hohenzollern monarchy, faced a crisis that could have unraveled its fragile foundations. Wilhelm I, the revered king of Prussia and first German emperor, narrowly escaped death in two audacious assassination attempts orchestrated by anarchists. These shocking events, occurring within months of each other, threatened to destabilize not only Germany, but the entire European order. The Prussian court, acutely aware of the potential fallout, swiftly moved to suppress the full details of these attacks, fearing that public knowledge of their scope, particularly the suspected ties to broader socialist movements, could ignite widespread panic and undermine the monarchy's authority. This calculated cover-up, designed to preserve the empire's stability, reveals the delicate balance of power in Wilhelm I's reign, and the lengths to which the ruling elite went to safeguard the monarchy's image in a time of rising radicalism. On May 11, 1878, Berlin was jolted by a brazen act of violence when Max Hödel, a young anarchist, fired at Wilhelm I as the emperor traveled through the city's streets in an open carriage. The bullet missed its mark, sparing Wilhelm's life, but the audacity of the attack sent ripples of alarm through the Prussian capital. Hödel, quickly apprehended by the authorities, was revealed to be a member of anarchist circles, driven by a fervent desire to dismantle the aristocratic order. The Prussian police, under pressure to contain the incident, downplayed its significance, framing it as the act of a lone malcontent. However, the attack hinted at a deeper unrest simmering beneath Germany's surface, a reality the court was desperate to conceal. The first attempt on Wilhelm's life, though unsuccessful, exposed the vulnerability of the monarchy and set the stage for an even more dramatic assault just weeks later. Barely 2 months later, on June 2, 1878, Wilhelm I faced a second, more perilous assassination attempt. Karl Nobiling, another anarchist with radical convictions, ambushed the emperor, this time wounding him in the arm with a gunshot. The attack, occurring in broad daylight, was a stark escalation from Hödel's failed effort, amplifying public concern and intensifying the court's fears. Wilhelm's survival, though miraculous, underscored the growing audacity of radical elements within Germany. The second attempt, coming so soon after the first, suggested a coordinated threat, raising suspicions of a broader conspiracy. The Prussian court, now grappling with the reality of repeated attacks on their monarch, moved swiftly to control the narrative, suppressing details that could link the incidents to organized socialist or anarchist networks. This secrecy was critical to preventing a public outcry that might have destabilized the young empire. The assassination attempts on Wilhelm I were not isolated acts, but part of a broader wave of radical unrest sweeping through Europe in the late 19th century. The 1870s were marked by growing discontent among the working classes, who chafed under the weight of aristocratic privilege and industrial exploitation. Socialist and anarchist movements, gaining momentum across the continent, viewed monarchs like Wilhelm as symbols of an oppressive old order ripe for overthrow. In Germany, this unrest manifested in strikes, protests, and a rising tide of revolutionary rhetoric. The anarchists behind the attacks on Wilhelm were not merely disgruntled individuals, but representatives of a larger ideological struggle that sought to upend the social and political structures of Europe. The court's fear of these movements drove their decision to conceal the true scope of the assassination plots, as public awareness of their radical roots could have fueled further dissent. The Prussian court's response to the assassination attempts was a master class in political damage control. Recognizing that full disclosure of the attack's details, particularly the potential involvement of socialist conspiracies, could spark widespread panic, the court opted for secrecy. Official statements portrayed the incidents as the work of isolated lunatics, downplaying any suggestion of organized threats. This suppression extended beyond public announcements. Key documents related to the investigations were either heavily redacted or destroyed, ensuring that the broader implications of the attacks remained hidden. The court's primary concern was not just Wilhelm's personal safety, but the preservation of the monarchy's aura of invincibility. By controlling the narrative, the authorities aimed to prevent a crisis of confidence in the empire, which was still consolidating its power after unification in 1871. The cover-up of Wilhelm I's assassination attempts finds echoes in other historical efforts to conceal threats against monarchs. The Gunpowder Plot of 1605, an attempt by English Catholics to assassinate King James I, was similarly shrouded in secrecy to downplay the extent of Catholic discontent and prevent public unrest. In Renaissance Florence, the Pazzi conspiracy of 1478, which targeted the Medici brothers, was carefully managed to avoid exposing the depth of political rivalries that could destabilize the city. Even within England's Plantagenet dynasty, the mysterious disappearance of the princes in the Tower was cloaked in ambiguity to protect the monarchy's legitimacy. In each case, ruling elites suppressed details of assassination plots to maintain control and project stability, a strategy mirrored by the Prussian court in 1878. These parallels highlight the recurring challenge faced by monarchies, balancing transparency with the need to preserve authority in times of crisis. The Prussian court's secrecy was driven by a specific fear, the specter of socialist and anarchist conspiracies that could galvanize public discontent. The late 19th century was a period of ideological ferment, with socialist movements advocating for workers' rights and anarchists calling for the abolition of hierarchical systems. In Germany, these groups were seen as existential threats to the monarchy, capable of mobilizing the disenfranchised masses. The court suspected that Hödel and Nobiling were not acting alone, but were part of a larger network with revolutionary ambitions. Revealing these connections risked inflaming public fears and lending legitimacy to radical causes. By suppressing evidence of potential conspiracies, the court sought to neutralize the ideological threat, ensuring that the monarchy remained a bulwark against the rising tide of radicalism. The cover-up of the 1878 assassination attempts has left a legacy of unanswered questions that continue to intrigue historians. Were Hödel and Nobiling truly lone actors, or were they part of a coordinated effort backed by socialist or anarchist organizations? Did foreign powers, wary of Germany's growing influence, have a hand in the plots? The destruction or loss of key documents has obscured the full truth, leaving only fragments of evidence in police reports and court records. This enduring mystery underscores the effectiveness of the Prussian court's suppression efforts, which successfully buried the broader context of the attacks. The lack of clarity has fueled speculation about the true nature of the threats against Wilhelm I, making the events of 1878 a compelling enigma in German history. Wilhelm I's survival of the assassination attempts was portrayed by the court as a divine endorsement of his rule, a narrative that bolstered the monarchy's image at a critical moment. Public celebrations of the emperor's resilience overshadowed the underlying threats, reinforcing the perception of the Hohenzollern dynasty as unassailable. However, behind this carefully crafted image lay a stark reality. The monarchy was vulnerable, and its survival depended on controlling information. The court's insistence on framing the attacks as isolated incidents prevented the public from questioning the empire's stability, but it also obscured the growing radicalism that would continue to challenge the monarchy in the years ahead. Wilhelm's survival, while a triumph, was a reminder of the fragility of imperial power in an era of ideological upheaval. The assassination attempts of 1878 had a profound, if understated, impact on German politics. The attacks prompted the government, under Bismarck's leadership, to enact the anti-socialist laws later that year, which banned socialist organizations and curtailed their activities. These laws, justified as a response to the perceived radical threat, were a direct consequence of the court's fears about the assassination plots. The cover-up, while successful in averting immediate unrest, contributed to a climate of repression that stifled political dissent and deepened social divisions. The events of 1878 thus served as a turning point, highlighting the monarchy's determination to maintain control in the face of growing challenges, even at the cost of transparency and open dialogue. The assassination attempts on Wilhelm I were more than personal brushes with death. They were a critical juncture in the history of the German Empire. The court's decision to suppress the details of the plots shaped the political landscape, reinforcing the monarchy's authority while masking the underlying tensions that threatened its stability. The cover-up, though effective in the short term, could not quell the radical forces that continued to gain strength in Germany and beyond. The events of 1878 serve as a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities faced by even the most powerful rulers, and the extraordinary measures taken to protect the illusion of invincibility. The mystery of Wilhelm I's near death and the secrecy that followed remain a haunting chapter in the saga of the German Empire, revealing the hidden struggles that defined an era. Hohenzollerns' secret colonial exploitation. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as Europe's empires vied for global dominance, the German Empire under Kaiser Wilhelm X concealed a horrifying truth in its colonial ventures. In German East Africa, encompassing modern-day Tanzania, Rwanda, and Burundi, a brutal system of exploitation unfolded, marked by forced labor, violence, and mass suffering. While the German regime publicly touted its civilizing mission to justify colonial rule, it secretly profited from an oppressive apparatus that devastated indigenous populations. This dark chapter, spanning 1880 to 1918, was meticulously obscured to maintain the empire's image as a progressive power. The reality of German East Africa, shrouded in a facade of benevolence, reveals a chilling tale of systemic abuse and hidden bloodshed, exposing the sinister underbelly of Wilhelm II's colonial ambitions. At the core of German colonial policy in East Africa was a ruthless forced labor system designed to extract maximum profit from the region's resources and people. Indigenous communities were coerced into grueling work on plantations, constructing infrastructure like roads and railways, and harvesting commodities such as rubber and cotton for German enterprises. Treated as mere tools of production, workers faced inhumane conditions. Starvation, overwork, and relentless violence were commonplace. Estimates suggest tens of thousands perished under these conditions, though the true toll remains uncertain due to deliberate suppression of records. The German administration framed these practices as necessary for modernization, but in truth, they were a calculated means of enriching the empire at the expense of African lives. This exploitation, cloaked in the rhetoric of progress, laid bare the moral bankruptcy of Germany's colonial enterprise. The German Empire's public narrative of a civilizing mission was a carefully crafted illusion to mask the atrocities in East Africa. Colonial officials and propagandists portrayed their rule as a benevolent effort to uplift savage populations, presenting forced labor and resource extraction as steps toward progress. This narrative was vital for maintaining domestic and international support for Germany's colonial ambitions, especially as the empire sought to rival powers like Britain and France. Behind this veneer, however, lay a system of oppression that prioritized profit over human dignity. The deaths of countless workers were dismissed or unreported, and the suffering of indigenous communities was erased from official accounts. This deliberate misrepresentation ensured that the German public and the wider world remained largely ignorant of the horrors unfolding in their colonies. To sustain the illusion of a benevolent empire, German authorities tightly controlled information about their colonial activities. Colonial reports, often authored by officials or complicit missionaries, were heavily sanitized, emphasizing infrastructure projects and economic gains, while omitting the violence and mortality rates. Accounts from independent observers, including missionaries who occasionally documented the abuses, were suppressed or discredited to prevent exposure. The German government's censorship extended to the press, ensuring that stories of brutality rarely reached European audiences. This systematic cover-up was not merely about protecting the empire's reputation. It was a strategic effort to avoid scrutiny that could undermine Germany's colonial legitimacy or provoke domestic backlash. The suppression of truth was as integral to the colonial project as the exploitation itself, ensuring the empire's dark secrets remained hidden. The German Empire's exploitation in East Africa was not an isolated phenomenon, but part of a broader pattern of colonial abuses by European powers. The British Empire's forced labor practices in India, marked by famine and exploitation, and the Belgian Congo's horrific treatment of workers under King Leopold II, where millions died, reflect similar disregard for indigenous lives. The Spanish Empire's role in the transatlantic slave trade, particularly under Charles III, further parallels the commodification of human beings for economic gain. These systems were the bedrock of European colonial wealth, built on the suffering of subjugated peoples. Germany's actions in East Africa, while distinct in their execution, shared this common thread of exploitation masked by claims of progress, highlighting the systemic cruelty embedded in the colonial enterprise. Under Wilhelm II, the German Empire pursued an aggressive colonial agenda, viewing East Africa as a key arena for asserting global power. The Kaiser's vision of a German empire rivaling Britain's required vast resources, and the colonies were seen as a means to achieve this through cheap labor and raw materials. Wilhelm's administration prioritized economic returns, turning a blind eye to the human cost of their policies. The forced labor system, enforced with military precision, was a direct reflection of this ambition, designed to maximize profit while minimizing accountability. Wilhelm's personal investment in the colonial project, coupled with his desire to project Germany as a modern power, drove the intensification of exploitative practices, even as the regime worked to conceal their brutality from the world. The human toll of Germany's colonial policies in East Africa was staggering. Indigenous workers, subjected to relentless labor demands, faced conditions akin to slavery. Malnutrition, disease, and physical punishment were rampant, leading to widespread mortality. Entire communities were disrupted as families were torn apart to meet labor quotas. The psychological trauma of constant surveillance and violence compounded the physical suffering, leaving a legacy of devastation. While precise figures are elusive due to suppressed records, the scale of death and suffering was immense, with some estimates suggesting tens of thousands of lives lost. These losses were not mere collateral damage, but the direct result of a system that valued profit over human life, a reality the German administration worked tirelessly to obscure. Despite the German Empire's efforts to control the narrative, fragmented accounts from missionaries and colonial officials provide a window into the horrors of East Africa. These documents, though often tempered to align with official rhetoric, reveal glimpses of the truth, descriptions of emaciated workers, accounts of brutal punishments, and reports of mass deaths from overwork. Missionaries, torn between their roles as observers and agents of the colonial system, occasionally documented the suffering. Though their reports were frequently suppressed or altered, these records, sparse and incomplete, are critical to understanding the reality of German rule, offering evidence of systemic abuse that contradicts the empire's claims of benevolence. Their scarcity underscores the effectiveness of Germany's censorship, which ensured that the full extent of the atrocities remained hidden. Germany's suppression of colonial abuses mirrors strategies employed by other European powers to conceal their own colonial sins. The British Empire, for instance, downplayed the famines and labor abuses in India, framing its rule as a mission of enlightenment. The Portuguese in Angola and Mozambique similarly obscured the brutality of their labor systems, presenting them as efforts to modernize. These cover-ups were not merely about public relations. They were essential to maintaining the political and economic structures that sustained colonial empires. By controlling information, these powers avoided accountability, deflecting criticism that could have challenged their colonial legitimacy. Germany's actions in East Africa followed this playbook, ensuring that the bloodshed remained a footnote in the grand narrative of imperial progress. Framing Germany's colonial venture in East Africa as the colony built on hidden blood encapsulates the chilling reality of Wilhelm II's imperial project. The forced labor camps, arbitrary punishments, and unrecorded deaths were not anomalies, but the foundation of Germany's colonial wealth. This system, sustained through violence and coercion, was carefully hidden behind a facade of civilization and progress. The German Empire's ability to conceal these atrocities allowed it to maintain its image as a modern power, even as it profited from unimaginable suffering. The phrase captures the duality of colonial ambition, a public narrative of enlightenment contrasted with a private reality of exploitation and death, a truth that was systematically buried to protect imperial interests. Victoria's secret mental health struggles. In the late 19th century, Victoria, Princess Royal, the eldest daughter of Queen Victoria and mother of Kaiser Wilhelm II, stood as a beacon of progress within the German monarchy. Celebrated for her diplomatic finesse, advocacy for education, and efforts to modernize the Hohenzollern court, she embodied the ideal of a forward-thinking royal. Yet, beneath this polished public persona lay a deeply personal struggle with depression and anxiety, particularly during the 1880s. These mental health challenges, concealed from public view due to the era's stigma and the monarchy's need for an image of unassailable strength, reveal a woman grappling with isolation and emotional turmoil. Victoria's hidden pain, set against her prominent role, offers a poignant glimpse into the personal costs of royal duty and the societal pressures that silence mental health struggles among the elite. The 1880s marked a particularly challenging period for Victoria as she navigated the multifaceted demands of her role as a wife, mother, and royal influencer. Married to Crown Prince Frederick of Prussia, she faced the scrutiny of a conservative court while raising a family, including the future Kaiser Wilhelm II. The expectations to uphold a facade of strength and stability were immense, compounded by her position as a bridge between the British and German royal families. Her diaries and letters from this period hint at moments of profound emotional distress, with references to feeling overwhelmed by her duties and isolated in a court that often viewed her progressive ideals with suspicion. These private struggles, carefully hidden to preserve the monarchy's image, underscore the isolating nature of her role and the personal toll of maintaining a public veneer of composure. Victoria's mental health challenges were shrouded in secrecy, a reflection of the 19th century's broader societal attitudes toward mental illness, particularly within royal circles. Admitting to depression or anxiety was tantamount to confessing weakness, a dangerous prospect for a royal whose public image was integral to the monarchy's stability. The Hohenzollern court, like many royal institutions, prioritized appearances, ensuring that Victoria's struggles remained a closely guarded secret. This concealment was not unique to Victoria. It mirrored the experiences of other prominent figures, such as Adelaide Frick, an American philanthropist whose mental health issues were similarly suppressed to protect her social standing. The systemic silencing of mental health struggles among the elite reveals a pervasive cultural reluctance to acknowledge vulnerability, particularly for women in positions of influence. The contrast between Victoria's public achievements and private suffering is striking. As a champion of social reforms, she promoted women's education, supported cultural exchanges, and sought to soften the rigidity of Prussian court life. Her efforts earned her admiration as a progressive force, yet they came at a personal cost. Historical records, including her personal writings, suggest that Victoria experienced episodes of deep melancholy and anxiety, particularly during periods of intense familial and political pressure. In one diary entry, she described the exhaustion of balancing motherhood with her public duties, hinting at a sense of inadequacy that plagued her privately. These moments of vulnerability, though rarely shared beyond her inner circle, paint a picture of a woman whose outward strength masked an internal battle, fought in silence to uphold her royal obligations. Despite the stigma, Victoria sought treatment for her mental health struggles, though always in a discreet manner. Court records and private correspondence indicate that she consulted physicians and possibly engaged in therapeutic practices, such as rest cures, which were common for women of her status. These efforts were conducted with utmost secrecy, as any public acknowledgement of her condition could have undermined her credibility and the monarchy's authority. Her family, including her husband Frederick, was likely aware of her difficulties, but they too understood the necessity of maintaining appearances. The fragmented nature of surviving records, many of which were censored or lost, leaves much of Victoria's treatment shrouded in mystery, but the evidence suggests a determined, if private, effort to manage her emotional challenges while fulfilling her public role. Victoria's concealed mental health struggles find parallels in the lives of other historical figures who face similar pressures. Jean Morton Cudahy, an American socialite, battled depression in private, her struggles obscured to maintain her public image as a philanthropist. Within royal history, the Tudor dynasty offers a compelling comparison. Henry VIII's physical and mental health issues were downplayed to preserve his image as a formidable monarch. Similarly, Queen Elizabeth I carefully managed perceptions of her emotional state to project strength. These figures, like Victoria, navigated a world where vulnerability was a liability, and their stories highlight the universal challenge of balancing personal well-being with public expectations. The Hohenzollerns' efforts to conceal Victoria's struggles reflect a broader pattern of royal families prioritizing image over individual health, often at great personal cost. The 19th century's misunderstanding of mental health exacerbated Victoria's challenges. Depression and anxiety were often dismissed as moral failings or nervous disorders, particularly for women who faced additional scrutiny for deviating from idealized roles. For a royal like Victoria, admitting to such struggles risked not only personal stigma, but also political consequences, as it could cast doubt on her ability to fulfill her duties. The pressure to embody perfection was unrelenting, and Victoria's decision to conceal her struggles was a pragmatic response to a society that equated emotional vulnerability with weakness. This societal stigma, coupled with the isolation of her royal status, likely deepened her sense of alienation, making her private battles even more difficult to bear. The secrecy surrounding Victoria's mental health had profound implications, both for her and the broader narrative of royal life. By hiding her struggles, she was denied the opportunity to seek open support, potentially exacerbating her condition. The court's insistence on silence also meant that her experiences were largely erased from historical records, leaving only glimpses in her diaries and letters. This erasure reflects a broader trend of minimizing women's emotional experiences, particularly those in power, whose vulnerabilities were seen as threats to institutional stability. Victoria's story, though obscured, challenges this narrative, highlighting the human cost of maintaining a flawless public image and the silent suffering endured by those bound by duty. Victoria's experience resonates with contemporary discussions about mental health, particularly among public figures. Even today, the pressure to project strength can deter individuals from seeking help, echoing the challenges Victoria faced over a century ago. Her story underscores the timeless struggle of balancing personal authenticity with public expectations, a tension that remains relevant for leaders and celebrities alike. By examining Victoria's concealed struggles, we gain insight into the historical roots of mental health stigma and the particular burdens faced by women in power. Her private battles, though hidden, offer a powerful reminder of the need for empathy and openness in addressing mental health, regardless of one's status or role. Victoria, Princess Royal, is remembered for her contributions to German society and her role as a bridge between European monarchies. Yet, her legacy is incomplete without acknowledging the personal struggles that shaped her life. Her mental health challenges, concealed to protect her image and the monarchy, reveal a woman of remarkable resilience who persevered despite immense pressure. The contrast between her public triumphs and private pain adds depth to her story, portraying her not just as a royal, but as a human being navigating the complexities of duty, identity, and emotional well-being. Her hidden struggles, though obscured by the demands of her time, enrich our understanding of her character and the era she inhabited. As we uncover the hidden secrets and untold stories of the Hohenzollern dynasty, we gain a deeper understanding of the family's complex legacy. From their rise as feudal lords in Swabia to their transformation into one of Europe's most powerful empires, the Hohenzollerns were not just military leaders, but also cultural visionaries. Behind their grandeur, however, lay a darker side: hidden abuses, covert alliances, and personal struggles that were concealed to protect the monarchy's image. Figures like Frederick the Great, Wilhelm II, and Victoria, Princess Royal, played pivotal roles in shaping Germany and Europe, yet their stories were often shrouded in secrecy. The Hohenzollern dynasty's legacy, though marred by scandal and conflict, also includes significant cultural contributions that still resonate today. Join us as we continue to explore the complex, often hidden history of this influential family, shedding light on the truths that history has tried to suppress and uncovering the lasting impact they had on the world.